Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer. The feature race at Golden Gate Fields on Saturday is the $100,000 El Camino Real Derby. Let's take a look at the field. We're going 1.1 miles on the Tapeta surface, 10 Kentucky Derby points on the line, Mike. But perhaps more importantly, the winner of the El Camino Real Derby, if nominated to the Triple Crown, gets an automatic entry into the Preakness.
Oh, that's huge.
That is huge for the connections of any one of these horses, and that's why we have an 11-horse field. Bob Baffert, hey! He's got the morning line favorite in here, and Azul Coast, who's already graded stakes placed on dirt. Really, the question for him is how will he handle the synth?
It's always a big question when these horses switch over from dirt to the surface, because we've seen plenty of horses that don't really seem to like it. If Azul Coast likes it, I guess he's the horse to beat.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector. Another horse that's going to be trying synthetic for the first time is the number 10, Checkmate. And I agree with this Pace Projector. Checkmite's shown speed on the dirt. He should be sent under Jose Valdivia, and I would expect him to make the lead. Remember, the El Camino Real Derby, 1.1 1/8 miles. It's a big ask for these young 3-year-olds, especially for one that hasn't run since October.
It's going to be, I think, maybe the big difference maker in this race, too. Who's going to get the 9 and who's not? Checkmate, I do expect him to make the front. The last time we saw him in October, they sent this horse at Keeneland. He went a pretty legit pace in there.
Indian Peak is the number 1, and Indian Peak last time tried dirt in the Cal Cup Derby. A, he did not have a very good trip, I didn't think, in that race. B, I don't think that's his surface. 2 starts back at Golden Gate, I really liked the way he beat several of these horses in a non-winners of 1. I think you have to believe that of the local contingent, he's one of the better ones.
I think he is. It's going to be interesting to see, what he does here. I personally think, Dan, that he's really going to get the 9, too. When you go back and watch his maiden win, that came on the turf. He finished very strongly in that race. They brought him back in the Gold Rush, and he was 4th behind Sacred Rider that day. He had an absolute impossible trip that day, hung out too dry in that race. He ran a lot better than it looks in the Gold Rush, and he came back in that allowance race, and he was way the best, and once again finished very strong in there. So I think he's going to get the 9.
And he's got the home court advantage over the 2 shippers that figure to take some money. The 2 is praised loudly. This horse has only won once in his career. It was on turf in a 20,000 maiden claimer. He's a reach at 50 to 1 on the morning line. We'll watch his most recent effort where he finishes 3rd for a starter 50. Orange Cap, he's in 3rd right now, in behind horses, but he gets clear with plenty of time, it seems, to make a dent, and he can't even get 2nd.
Yeah, he's got 1/8 of a mile here to make some kind of a run. He can't do it. He looks like a deserving long shot in this race.
Best buyer of 60 coming into this race. He's going to have to do a lot better. The 3 is American Farmer, a recent maiden winner for trainer Steve Sherman, going 1 mile and a 16th. We'll watch that race right now. That first quarter mile of this race I thought was pretty fast, and American Farmer was sitting back last. I thought he got a really nice ride in here. He's on the outside now going after the leader. He's going to dig in and get it done. From this pedigree standpoint, I mean, listen, I don't think 1.1 1/8 will be a problem. They haven't wanted to sprint him at all. It's been 2 turns since day 1.
Yeah, he was okay in this race. They did, go a good enough pace in front of him, but they just took him back to last. I liked the ride. He got the inside move to the stretch. Then they got him clear. This horse did the rest. It was a step in the right direction. He has to take another one.
While the 4 Wine and Whiskey's only lifetime victory came sprinting, he did acquit himself nicely most recently in a field that included several others. He was up close to the pace. The pace wasn't very fast. He had a chance. It was one of those, bunched up finishes where I'm not sure if any one of them were that good.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he ran pretty well in that race. He really had his shot at it. They fanned him out into the stretch. The winner, who's also back in this race, the Stiff, was right to his outside. They dueled basically all through the stretch, and this horse, he just went to his wrong lead at the end of that race and got out finished. It makes me wonder if he really wants the added distance of this race. Going back to his effort 2 back when they stretched him out, he had a pretty tough trip that day, though.
Mysterious Stones, the number 5, had a 3-race win streak snapped in that race last time out that featured several of these horses. Another one that was up close to that moderate pace. I thought he had a chance in the stretch. He just couldn't seal the deal, and he kind of ran his usual race. A buyer's speed figure in the 60s. I think he's going to have to do better to win this.
I felt the same way. He was pretty game in that race to hold on to 3rd after the 1-2 finishers got by him in the stretch, but I still feel like he has to do even better than that in this field.
Maybe Final can be given a mulligan for that race because, as I mentioned, the pace wasn't very fast. He was wide most of the way, and it was just very difficult for him to to contend with that sort of trip, and he was still making up a little bit of ground. I think he's more like the horse that ran that 72 Beyer 2 starts back, but that being said, he was no match for Indian Peak.
Yeah, he wasn't. They took him back to last in that race, though, and it almost felt like they weren't even, they looked like they were riding for a piece in that race. They didn't go for a run around that second turn. They stayed in, and then they let him rally through the stretch. He got second. Maybe it's sort of similar tactics here, Dan, as they stretch him out and step him up. Maybe they just take him back and try and make one run.
Sacred Rider has figs that are competitive with some of the major contenders in this race. Stakes placed over the Tapeta at Golden Gate. Stakes placed on dirt at a giant price last time out in the Cal Cup Derby. We'll watch that race right now. And he was three wide in between horses. He's in with a big look at this in the red silks. He's actually going to poke his nose in front. He hangs on his left lead for a very long time. He's going to end up being down towards the inside, and he's just going to beat a neck by a horse that came back to run a decent third in the San Vicente with an 87 Beyer.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he ran well in this race. Yeah, I mean, he certainly handled the dirt fine. He was on the outside all the way in there. You saw that he couldn't hold on at the end, but he's well clear of the rest in second. A good performance. He was no match for Indian Peak as the favorite 2 starts back. That concerns me when you go 3 back to the Gold Rush. He ran well that day, but he had a good trip, and Indian Peak did not.
A Journey to Freedom, the number 8, was beaten by 3 of these horses as the favorite last time out, but it was his first start against winners. You really respect the trainer, Blaine Wright. This guy does an exceptional job, and I think this horse is all upside. I wouldn't be surprised if he improves by leaps and bounds in this race. I'm not sure it's enough to win it, but he's a horse I would consider somewhere in my exotics.
Yeah, I'm using this horse in this race, especially if the morning line holds. When they stretched him out for the first time 2 back, he got a great trip and ride that day. But listen, he did what he had to do with that trip, and he won fairly comfortably last time. He had sort of a similar trip to the one that Indian Peak had in the Gold Rush, where he was just hung up wide the entire way, and his rider could never get over to save any ground. And I think it really compromised him at the end of that race.
Azul Coast is your 2-to-1 morning line favorite, trying synthetic for the first time. We liked his dirt debut at Los Alamitos, where he got bumped at the start, checked on the first turn from the back of the pack, 6 wide on the backstretch, 7 wide into the stretch. And I guess that's where you want to be on the outside at Los Alamitos, but he fairly well destroyed that field once he got into the straight. We liked him a little bit in the sham. The pace was against him. His stablemate Authentic made all the running. Azul Coast doesn't have that kind of speed. He was gritty to finish second, although I don't know what he was finishing ahead of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either, but I'll give him some credit for being second in there after being last and then taking over to the rail the entire way. As you mentioned, his career debut. It's really something to watch. I mean, I guess you're right, because when you watch a lot of those Los Al races, it seems like nobody wants to be inside, but I don't know if you want to be where he was either. I mean, he was in the parking lot. He actually ran really well. I think this horse does have talent. We'll see if he handles the surface.
Let's watch Checkmite's maiden win at Keeneland. This is during the fall meet. He was hustled very hard out of there by Jose Ortiz to make the lead. He got clear on the backstretch and got a breather, and he is going to be very, very game in the 2-path in the yellow cap to win this race. The 5th place horse has come back to place 3 times in maiden specials, buyers ranging from 78 to 84. This horse was purchased at public auction for $190,000 in November. Richard Balta's showing some confidence here. He could have found a 1X at Santa Anita on the dirt for this horse. He obviously thinks this horse is going to be fine on the scent, and maybe more distance the better.
That's what sort of made me take a second look at him too. And he does have pedigree to handle the surface. Dan was more of a turf and synthetic horse. Maybe this horse will really handle the surface, which he did run well when he broke his maiden. I wasn't blown away by the win, but they did send him early. He had to go pretty fast to make the lead. You saw in the replay there, he was surrounded at the top of the stretch. He dug in very gamely to hold.
The Stiff beat 4 of these horses last time out on January the 19th, only with a 64 Beyer speed figure, but pretty game in how he did it. We'll watch that race right now, and the Stiff is splitting horses, I believe, right now, and the pink and yellow on the outside beginning to make his move, and he's just going to get up to win this race by a neck. I didn't think this was the strongest field in the world. We've talked a lot about how these blanket finishes usually don't produce, 4 superior efforts. I think he's okay. I think this is a lousy post position. He's going to have to improve.
Yeah, it is lousy. He was very game to win that race. And you saw Wine and Whiskey, who ran second to him there. He ran well, too. You saw he went to his wrong lead there at the end. It probably made the difference. This horse was very game to win. What kind of trip can he get from post 11?
I guess you just hope for the best. I mean, I guess since Checkmite has speed, Julian Coutan can try to follow him out of there and try to ease his way down towards the inside. That's probably how I would do it, because I don't know if I want to take back to last in a full field going a mile and an eighth and try to go around everybody with the old Azul Coast Los Al trip. I don't think that's going to work in the El Camino Real Derby. We take a look at our top picks. I wonder if Baffert's kind of given up on Azriel Coast, but then again, when you have 25 good 3-year-olds, you've got to find a spot. And Azriel Coast, probably not as good as Authentic, probably not as good as Nadal, probably not as good as 1,000 Words, probably not as good as 2 others that Baffert has. This is a good spot to see if he can actually progress down the road. He's going to get a mile and an eighth. I think he's supposed to get through this, or else it's back to step 1.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I respect him. I'm not going to be surprised when he wins. I don't necessarily want a super short price on him in this race.
Sense.
And I like what I've seen from Indian Peak. I do think he's going to get the 9 furlongs, and he's drawn to the inside to save some ground. We'll see if he gets a trip.
Great inside post for Indian Peak. Mike's top selection, 1-8-10-9 for Mike, 9-7-10-3 for me. The El Camino Real Derby and its $100,000 purse. It's got an approximate post time of 3:52 Pacific. Good luck.